many of you have ever experienced exclusion? Many? Most? It wasn't a very nice experience, was it? At best, disempowering. The word inclusion and its adjective inclusive is replete in development programming. We see it in relation to inclusive development, inclusive education, inclusive cities, financial inclusion, social inclusion. But when you scratch beyond the surface, beyond the word, beyond the phrase, we often find that inclusion is not that inclusive. For some people, for some groups, like persons with disabilities, exclusion is omnipresent. It's endemic and it's systemic. The World Bank estimates that there are 1 billion people with disabilities on the planet. Or differently put, 15% of the world's population. This is not an insignificant population. Now, if we know that, we also need to understand that people with disabilities are a homogeneous group. People with disabilities may have visible disabilities. They may have invisible disabilities. They may live in urban cities. They may live in rural and remote parts of the country. People with disabilities may be LGBTI. They may be straight. They may be male. They may be female. They cross across our economic strata. So we don't have a one-size-fits-all for people with disabilities. It's also important to recognize that people with disabilities may have been born with a disability or may have acquired a disability by way of natural disaster. In Haiti, 300,000 people were estimated to have become disabled after the earthquake. We know that war and conflict also creates disabilities. We also know that disease creates disabilities. Think Zika. So why is this important? Well, this is important because I think what it tells us is that people with disabilities are part of our human diversity. And we're here to stay, we're not going anywhere, so get used to it. % of persons with disabilities live in developing countries. Research tells us that people with disabilities are amongst the poorest of the poor. UNICEF estimates that 90% of children with disabilities are not in school. And yet we know that education is an equalizer. We know that education can break the cycle of discrimination and break the cycle of poverty. We also know that jobs matter and that jobs create empowerment for families, but they also bring dignity and respect. And this is also the case for people with disabilities. So these are just two issues that, to me, suggest the importance of why disability matters for development. Now, we've made some gains globally. The one particular issue is the introduction of the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities that has now been ratified by 162 countries. The other very important piece of information is the most recent adoption of the Sustainable Development Goals. These goals are global goals. These goals are new goals. They're actually quite ambitious goals. They are the first time that goals have mentioned disability inclusion. These goals are important because they direct how development goes and where the money flows. Now, we have the goals. It is very important that we look at how we can make these goals work to make sure that we're including people with disabilities. And let me offer, in that regard, 5 building blocks that I think are a foundation towards building inclusive societies. The first block is to ensure that there is a strong legislative and policy framework. Most of you will know about the Americans with Disabilities Act. And that act has fundamentally changed the way we see people with disabilities in this country. In many of the countries in which I work, there are no laws to protect and promote the rights of disabilities. And even when those laws exist, they're often not implemented and therefore do not protect and promote the lives of persons with disabilities. So laws and policies are very important. My second block is a block that looks at how we ensure that we build inclusive, accessible spaces and services. For the purpose of spaces, I think it's really important that we look at the concept of universal design, a concept that suggests that we build in a manner that is good for everybody. For services, I think we need to start thinking about how we ensure our services meet everybody's needs. I was once in Uganda visiting an HIV and AIDS testing center, and the center was there for everybody. I got to the center, and I couldn't get in because it had 3 steps. And I thought to myself, well, this is a hugely missed opportunity for hundreds and thousands of persons who may use wheelchairs, would not be able to get into the center. So services are really important, and access is an important part of that. My third goal is my third building block is the importance of data and research. We need to continue to build the evidence base. We need to get a better understanding of where people with disabilities are, who they are, what type of barriers they experience, and most importantly, how we can begin to remove those barriers and provide solutions to ensure that we are more inclusive. My fourth building block is quite a complex one, and it's about changing social norms. You see, negative attitudes towards people with disabilities abound. The general notion of people with disabilities is that people with disabilities can't do this, can't do that, and therefore are seen in a negative light. In many countries, disability is associated with witchcraft, with bad karma. So we need to begin to change the stigma and the prejudice that comes with how people see people with disabilities. But let me share with you a quick story, because I think it illustrates how this plays out. So one day, I was waiting for a friend. I was sitting on the pavement. I had a can of Coke in my hand. And I quickly saw from the side of my eye this little old lady toddling over. And she was just about to drop a coin into my can when I said, not wanting to frighten her, "Oh, no, 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 not my Diet Coke." And, the reality was that she hadn't seen me. She hadn't seen me as a person. She hadn't seen me as a productive citizen. She had seen a person in a wheelchair. She had seen her object of pity. The fifth goal is also an important goal, and it's a goal that speaks to the importance of participation and empowerment of people with disabilities, so voice. This is absolutely essential because far too often, the people that make laws, that make policies, that build cities, that develop services, have no idea what people with disabilities want or require. And so it is essential that we think about the mantra that comes from the disability movement that says, nothing about us without us. Those goals, I think, will bring us to a space where we can really begin to disrupt the narrative that disability equals pity, and insist on a narrative that empowers people with disability and sees people with disabilities as equal partners in the development agenda. So in closing, I just want to say that I do not see myself as an object of pity. I see myself as a disruptor. I see myself as a catalyst for change. I see myself as an unapologetic warrior for social justice, and I see myself as a broker for equal opportunity. I also see myself as a thought leader dedicated to ensuring that disability remains and is a core part of the development agenda. But clearly I can't do that alone. So I really want to invite you all to join me and many millions in the world and become part of a movement that insists on inclusive societies, because we know that inclusive societies are not just good for people with disabilities, but they're good for everybody. We know that inclusive societies are often more caring societies, and that in many instances, they're often more democratic. Thank you.